Standing calmly, I watched as my automobile was hauled away from my own yard, without notice, without explanation, and she was smiling right there, carrying a bundle of papers akin to her royal status in the area. She was unaware, though, that I am not the kind to submit to fictitious power. Having battled corruption for 15 years has helped me to recognize a tyrant right away. But how could this have come to be? And who actually is this woman believing she owns everything she comes across? Allow me to return you. The name Marcus Johnson is mine. I'm 43 years old. Early on, I retired and relocated to Willow Creek, what I consider to be a quiet area. My old Mustang was simple. Fix it, relax, maybe even finish some of those books gathering dust. I preferred silence. I started war. Her name is Whitemore Karen. For the past 3 years, Willow Creek HOA's president. She considered our 85-home community as her personal castle. Authoritarian, compulsively neat, and shockingly orderly. It was control, down to the blade on every grass, not just power. Get ready if you believe HOA rules are limited to paint colors or fence height. The depth of the rabbit hole will soon be revealed. On the surface, Willow Creek was lovely. Well-kept houses valued up to $400,000 and tree-lined streets. Benevolent on the surface, Karen had turned the HOA policies into something more akin to a dictatorship. Little limitations, unfounded fines, and shockingly high degree of monitoring. My first day in the local area, not quite finished unpacking, when she came up like a hawk spotting prey. She yelled, "Excuse me, that truck has been parked here for 4 hours. Commercial trucks have to move according to HOA regulations. No greeting, neither welcome, merely dominance." Now most people would dismiss this. I have, however, dealt with people like Karen before. They're not stopped. They grow more intense. I stayed courteous. I transferred the truck. I considered perhaps that was only a rough introduction. 2 weeks later, though, I received an email saying, "Immediate compliance required." Karen had evidently enacted a new rule prohibiting cars parked in driveways for more than 6 hours. But before I bought my house, I had studied the rules. That regulation lacked. She reacted angrily when I called to ask questions. "Mr. Johnson, I asked to see the meeting minutes. I do not value my authority being questioned." She replied they were being transcribed. She will get back to me when I inquired about the board member list. Nevertheless, she never did. That's when I understood that this went beyond mere guidelines. This has to do with control. And she was aiming not only at me. I began to chat to neighbors. The floodgates opened at that point. The sweet widow Mrs. Peterson next door informed me Karen had penalized 12 families over 6 months. One lady paid a $300 charge for leaving her garbage bin 1 hour late. Another had to paint her whole house in beige, since Karen objected to the color. Then I ran into Tom Bradley, a longtime resident local mechanic. He leaned forward as if he were about to expose official secrets. "I believe she is in bed with the towing company," he said quietly. "Quick Tow has been here 47 times since she came under control. Past that, 3 times in 5 years. Oh, and spouse of Karen? Manages a fleet for a living. Right. Suspicious." This neighbor was not nosy with a clipboard. This was a full-scale endeavor, and I was going to probe more. I formally asked to have the past 3 years' HOA meeting minutes sent. Her answer? She didn't send the paperwork. Your constant questioning disturbs community peace. She began to harass me instead. Every morning, she passed my house, shooting pictures. Measured my grass using a ruler. Notices a violation if my grass was a millimeter too long. She grumbled over my trash cans, even though they were just as everyone else's. She aimed to denigrate, separate, break me. She could not notice, though, the portion I do not back down from. Hit a new low in week 8. Karen emailed the neighborhood generally, a community standards reminder, without mentioning individuals. Nevertheless, the picture she attached? All-around view of my truck. My license plate clearly shows here. It was a public humiliation, a conscious endeavor to make the society against me. She went beyond what was appropriate. And at that point I stopped defending and began organizing my counteroffensive. What followed turned the whole area upside down. I revealed everything. The bogus policies, the dubious towing offers, the misuse of authority. And let me say, when people discover they have been misled for years, they object backwise, demanding, "So what then did I do? How did I draw the neighborhood together and expose Karen?" You really should not miss the following section of the narrative. I understood then. This was more than just enforcement. This was private. Karen was fighting psychological war. She was not running a neighborhood. Her aim was dominance, not compliance. She wanted to be broken into obedience, humiliated, or out. She did not know, though, that I had faced worse. I always fight back as well. I had spent 15 years with power-hungry bullies, hiding under polished titles and uniforms. I knew both within and outside this game. And this time I was wearing experience, not a badge. Since that is precisely what it was, I handled it like a criminal case. Around my house, I put legal security cameras. 3 days later, they saw Karen going into my backyard without permission, taking measurements and pictures. In our state, that is criminal trespass. Strike one. You see, corruption starts to squirm as you bring it under attention. I picked up an old buddy, Sarah Chun, originally the city attorney. She is now a real estate and HOA legal expert. I gave an explanation of the circumstances. She said, "Marcus, this is textbook HOA abuse. Should she be changing policies without a vote? All she has imposed might be legally void. We wanted evidence." At this point, I contacted Pinnacle Property Management, the official HOA supervising body. I found what they told me shocking. For 2 years, Karen had been turning in fake meeting minutes. The parking rule was 6 hours? Not approved. 15 of the 23 regulations she was enforcing actually did not exist in the original bylaws. Still, that was not even the worst of things. One phone call to the state business register turned me onto the smoking gun. Whitmore Fleet Management, Karen's husband's company, owned Quick Tow Towing. The HOA had been paying them $800 on average per month for 18 months. Karen created violations, approved tows, and directed money into her own family's company. I went up to her personally, hoping she would back off. She neither did. She tightened her focus 2 times. "Mister," then came the threat. "If you keep this up, I'll call the police and report you for stalking and intimidation." She snapped, "And you will follow the rules or face the consequences." Johnson is the legitimately elected president of this HOA. I fixed her dead in the eye. Composed. Continuous. Then I took out my badge. "Karen," I responded. "I am Marcus Johnson, retired police chief of Millbrook. Over 15 years, I have looked at corruption, abuse, and fraud. And right now, for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, you are looking at sufficient proof to support criminal charges." Her face flushed white. She still had one frantic action remaining, though. 2 hours later, my truck was once more under tow from my front driveway. Only this time, I was ready. Karen was there clutching her binder of false documentation with that arrogant look she always wore. That Saturday, I convened an emergency HOA meeting. Our largest turnout ever. 51 of the 85 homes turned up. Clearly traumatized, Karen arrived with her husband David and 2 supporters. Not business as usual was this. Button shirt, tie, calm confidence of a man about to reveal the truth. I stood at the front of the room. "Good day, all of you. The name Marcus Johnson is mine. Until lately, Millbrook's chief of police was me. I settled in Willow Creek to have a quiet retirement. Instead, what I saw was systematic corruption. Right here in our own neighborhood. The room turned quiet. Eyes went wide. Phones were put down. They were paying attention. On the projector next to the regulations Karen had been enforcing, I brought up the original 1998 HOA rules. "As you can see," I replied, 23 of these so-called rules don't exist in any official papers. These were produced by Karen Whitmore, imposed them, and penalized us for breaking unwritten policies never approved. Karen started to intervene, but before she could say anything, Mrs. Peterson, our dear 70-year-old neighbor, got up. "Karen," she responded sharply, "I have spent 20 years living here, and I have never seen this neighborhood so split or terrified. Let the man voice his opinion." And I spoke as well. The financial trail followed next. I showed spreadsheets proving that Karen's husband's QuickTow services had received payments totaling over $15,000. I demonstrated how Karen had paid her own HOA from $500 to $2,000 a month without permission. People let out gassings. A few murmurs passed. Others got up, betrayed and enraged. Karen had dominated via bureaucracy and fear. She was drowning in her own lies, though, just now. I stopped and gestured across the space. This is beyond me as well. It relates to every household paid unfairly fines. Every neighbor pounced on her. Every dime stolen. And in that instant, for the first time, the community came together in truth, rather than in fear. David Whitmore sprang to his feet, clearly irritated. "Now wait just a minute," he said. "Our business arrangement with the HOA is quite legal. We offer a required service." I did not hesitate. I nodded coolly and said, "Mr. Whitmore, you are quite right. Towing services are legal. On the other hand, a HOA board member with financial interests failing to reveal that link, failing to abstain, and personally gains from enforcement activities is not legitimate." And that was only the beginning, since what I disclosed next turned the whole room quiet. I then began the third section of my presentation, video proof. I showed security footage showing HOA President Karen Whitmore intruding onto private property one by one, in my own yard using a phone camera and a measuring tape. Then more clips from 2 other neighbors, all displaying her acting in the same way. Under state law, this was criminal trespass rather than only a violation. More crucially, though, it was part of a clear practice of intimidation intended to scare neighbors into following invented regulations. I dropped the bombshell, my surprised witness, just when the room seemed to be unable to get more tense. Former HOA President Robert Martinez flew from Portland just for this meeting. His account changed the whole attitude. "In 6 years, I approved 3 authorized tows," he stated. "Karen has approved 47 in just 18 months, he said, revealing that the $12,000 HOA surplus had evaporated entirely, spent on salary increases and illegal enforcement. And then the breaking point arrived when the locals got up. They related their horror stories, one at a time. Parking his work truck in his own garage, classified as a commercial vehicle. Tom Bradley was fined $300. 6 other houses had the same hue. But Jennifer Walsh, a single mother, was obliged to repaint her front door. Now clearly terrified, Karen was speaking with David, turning over her file as though it had a secret escape route. She stood at last and sought to repair her reputation. She said, voice cracking, "This is all taken out of context." Though the residents weren't buying it, everything I did was to preserve property values. I got up at that to deliver the last strike. "Mrs. Whitmore, I have looked at those who misuse authority for 15 years. The data is quite obvious. You have violated our rules, broken state law, and betrayed the confidence of our community. This ends now." I turned to call for a no-confidence vote in the room. It wasn't even close. 47 households cast votes to have Karen removed. Karen voted the 1 vote in her favor, and just 3 abstained. She gathered her stuff, and her hands shook. She cautioned, "This isn't over." But her words were hollow. Her might vanished. But what followed her fall was much more dramatic, and justice was still getting begun. 1 week later, I formally complained to the district attorney's office. Embezzlement, fraud, criminal intrusion. The white-collar DA team discovered even more proof: falsified invoices, kickbacks, ghost payees. Representing the victims of Karen's illegal penalties, my friend Sarah Chen filed civil lawsuits to get returned money. 3 months later, Karen turned herself in. She was sentenced to 18 months, 3 years of probation, and had to pay back $27,000. David was sentenced 5 years and spent a year in jail. Their house sold, and they left Willow Creek in dishonor. Their business, Quick Tow, lost its license and was told to pay thousands of towing penalties back off. Though what happened here was a rebirth of a damaged community. You might believe the story ends here. The change came very immediately with Karen gone. Reversing all of Karen's fictitious policies, Mrs. Peterson assumed temporary presidency. The 1998 bylaws came back in force. People started leaving their houses once more. Talks took place instead of paranoia. Neighbors exchanged smiles with one another. 2 months later, the board urged me to run for president. At first, I hesitated, but the great support convinced me. Elected with 78 out of 85 votes on a beautiful Saturday morning, we will build a community on respect, fairness, and transparency, not fear. I promised simply. And we performed, not only promised. We established a website including public financial reports, changed rules subject to community votes, and instituted expenditure caps. We over 60% eliminated pointless regulations. But government was only starting point. We started planning monthly BBQs, each other with chores like yard work and repairs. A good neighbor network supported one another. We developed a community tool library and even designed a playground and garden. From a terrified, split community, Willow Creek evolved into a vibrant, loving family. And our narrative extended much beyond our borders. Our tale was written in a local newspaper. Other communities suffering with HOA corruption started sending invitations to me. 3 states have currently embraced our model. Inspired by our case, even our state legislature adopted fresh HOA accountability rules. 1 year after Karen's departure, Willow Creek is stronger, freer, more unified than it has ever been. It is also safer. And it all began with one of the residents not remaining silent. Should this transpire in your neighborhood, what would you do? I stayed silently in the heart of our vibrant communal garden, the air smelling of grilled food and laughter resounding from the newly built playground, while their parents sat around picnic tables exchanging stories and grins at our weekly neighborhood barbecue. Children were playing freely. Now 71 and happily acting as our HOA secretary, Mrs. Peterson went up grinning softly and said, "Marcus, you know what? I have not seen anybody genuinely thrilled to live here in 3 years. This is first." I went back to her smiling. "That's exactly what I discovered over 15 years of law enforcement," I said. "A good leader does not dominate the people. Rather, they serve them." But then something unanticipated showed along in the mail right when I believed the narrative was finished. And it turned out that our struggle meant even more than we had ever known. 6 months ago, I received a letter from a small neighborhood in Ohio. They had managed to remove their own corrupt HOA president using the very same techniques and strategy one had shared during community forums. The letter opened with, "Dear Chief Johnson, thanks to your example, our community is finally free from the tyranny we endured for 4 years. Your story gave us hope and showed us that justice is possible when people work together." That one message taught me everything I needed to know. What we had done at Willow Creek mattered beyond our property limits. It was a blueprint for others, a signal that no one had to live under unfair, fear-based tyranny. And the outcome screamed louder than words. Property values are up 15% today. But more importantly, people want to live here. We have the lowest turnover rate in the area. New residents often tell us they moved here not only for the homes, but also for our reputation, fair rules, honest leadership, and neighbors who look out for one another. And that silver Ford F-150, the one Karen sought to use against me, still sits in my driveway every night, just where it belongs. You just have to know how to fight for it. It is no more a sign of conflict. Karen Whitmore thought fear and false authority would silence people. She later discovered that true power results from integrity, openness, and service, not from intimidation. What then is the lesson from Final Hook? Though basic, it is absolutely essential. Whether it's a police chief, a mayor, or a HOA president, someone abusing their position doesn't mean giving up or subtly moving away. The response is to get to your feet, collect proof, adopt the procedure, trust the legislation, and never undervalue the achievements of a cohesive society. There is occasionally need for patience. Sometimes you have to be persistent. Still, the fight is always well worth it, because ultimately our neighborhoods are only as strong as our determination to defend them and our readiness to hold each other responsible for the future we all deserve.